Breaking bad. The government goes after two JP Morgan traders for allegedly cheating clients. In today's cover story, con artists are capitalizing on healthcare confusion. Plus, remember those mermaid entertainers from the 40s? How they are making waves today. And will Apple's massive success translate into a box office smash? First Business starts now.
You're watching First Business. Financial news, analysis, and today's investment ideas.
Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, August 15th. I'm Angela Miles. In today's First Look, the Dow took a triple-digit tumble Wednesday. The blue chips fell 113 points. The Nasdaq down 15 and S&P lost 9. The market lost ground on concerns over the Fed's next move and soft sales numbers from Macy's. Gold moved up $15, oil up by 12 cents. Cisco skids on earnings. The stock fell more than $2 after the close. The tech company topped analysts' expectations, but the CEO says the economy is challenging and inconsistent. Cisco is cutting 4,000 jobs. Fight for flight. Attorneys for American Airlines and U.S. Airways are gearing up for a courtroom battle to prove the merging of the airlines won't hurt consumers. The government is blocking the deal with a lawsuit. Todd Horwitz joins us now. He's with Average Joe Options. Good morning. And there has been some selling in this market, my friend.
Good morning, Angie. Yes, there has been some selling, but, very muted. If you take a look at the bigger picture, we're really range bound between 1680 in the S&P on the downside and 1700 on the upside. And in the last 9 days, we have not violated either side of that. So although it feels busy, we are lacking volume and volatility. Yesterday was a little bit of a sell-off, but it certainly didn't get carried away, and it certainly wasn't done on any real volume or any real panic.
And you're my bear on the show, so that sounds like a mild situation to me. Moving into inflation, some inflation numbers came out yesterday. We also heard from a Fed president saying that we might see some runaway inflation in the distant future, perhaps. What do you think? There was a bit of a move in gold yesterday.
Well, gold did have a nice move, and I think it's still got a pretty good resistance level, about 1350. I think the Fed now is scrambling. I think the Fed is in trouble, and I don't think they're going to be able to taper so fast, and I think there's going to be a problem. I think we have more of a problem of deflation or disinflation here as what they've done, because they have not created any growth, so there's no real movement in the markets through money. It's all been done artificially. So although Bullard came out yesterday and said something, what we're really seeing is that the interest rate market itself is pushing interest rates higher, which is counter to what the Fed wants to do right here. And I think the Fed's in a little bit of trouble, and I think this meeting in September is going to tell a big story. But I think the market's looking for a pretty good sell-off once we get things rolling here.
Thank you for your time today. Have a good trading day.
Thank you. You too.
The Justice Department is naming names as it levels criminal charges in the JP Morgan Chase London Whale trading scandal. The bad bets caused the bank to lose $6 billion last year. Federal prosecutors and the SEC accuse a former managing director and a former trader of conspiracy and wire fraud. The U.S. Attorney for Manhattan alleges that the suspects misled investors, regulators, and the public. The SEC's civil complaint states that the traders brazenly accumulated a massive position in derivatives, then lied to cover up their losses when the market turned against them. JP Morgan Chase is not commenting on the new charges.
Now on to an update on the attempt by lawmakers to break up the banks. Senators Elizabeth Warren and John McCain are leading the charge to reinstate a section of the Glass-Steagall Act that would separate traditional banking from investment banking. Political reports lawmakers in at least 18 states have introduced legislation calling on Congress to break up the banking business. Some members of the Tea Party don't want government involved with the bank rules.
Citigroup is scaling back. The bank is reportedly backing off from alternative investments that have, according to the Wall Street Journal, caused regulatory and financial headaches for the bank. Pressure is on for banks to exit hedge funds and private equity under Dodd-Frank regulation. Citi is the latest bank to scale back on the investments. JP Morgan made a similar move last month.
Discover is offering more than credit cards. This week, the company moved into home equity loans. Discover estimates 80% of its customers are homeowners, and it wants to compete against Quicken Loans. Discover will offer home equity loans up to $100,000. Fixed rates will range from 5.99 to 11.99%. During the financial crisis, many homeowners took on too much debt using home equity lines.
4.5 months before some of the largest components of healthcare reform take effect, there are scammers trying to use the law's ambiguity for financial gain. As our cover story explains, their targets are individuals who will be signing up to buy health insurance on their own. The Better Business Bureau says scammers posing as federal representatives are conning people into giving personal bank and credit card information in order to qualify for Obamacare.
The calls are increasing now, not only locally but nationally in scope. And again, the number of victims, we don't have the number of victims, but it's obviously in the hundreds recently from the BB Chicago. And I can only imagine across the country, it's got to be in the thousands of consumers who have been victimized.
Investigators admit scammers are using uncertainty about who will be impacted first when Obamacare goes into effect.
Some states are starting these exchanges. Some states are opting out of the exchanges. The exact rules about these are a little bit unclear.
And there have been recent changes. Large employers got a 1-year delay in offering insurance to their workers, and there's another 1-year delay in determining who will qualify for government subsidies to buy insurance. And enrollment in health exchanges themselves has been extended from October 1st through the end of March. Add to these changes phone calls from out of the blue.
Unfortunately, there's very sophisticated people that are able to call up on the phone, sound very official, use all the right terminology, and trick people into giving out personal information. You should never give out personal information to someone that phones you up.
For now, there are websites to help explain Obamacare. One of them is run by the nonpartisan nonprofit EnrollAmerica.org. It's available to answer questions about enrollment in health insurance exchanges and the push to educate Americans about who pays and how much state by state. As for the scammers, the Better Business Bureau says if you are suspicious, one tip is to ask for the caller's number and say you'll call them back. More often than not, the Bureau says the scammer will give up.
Virtual money, known as bitcoins, have lawmakers considering regulating the currency. State and federal officials are said to be starting up investigations into the modern money. Bitcoins are used in online transactions and currently go unmonitored. Bitcoins are stored digitally in computers. The price of the Bitcoin is bid up by buyers. At last check, Bitcoins were being sold for around $108 online.
A rival bid to take musical instrument company Steinway private stole the show. Shares hit a high note on word that the company agreed to be purchased by hedge fund Paulson & Company for $40 a share. Shares shot up 7% before closing the day at $41. Earlier this summer, the Kohlberg Company made a $35 a share offer. Steinway is now paying Kohlberg a $6 million fee to terminate that deal. The buyout's expected to close in September.
Debt is on the decline in America. Household debt, including mortgages, credit cards, and auto loans, fell $78 billion in the second quarter to $11.15 trillion. Sounds like a lot, but it's the lowest level since 2006. Debt is dwindling as the housing market improves, giving some Americans the opportunity to sell homes they cannot afford.
Europe is also making steps in the right direction as it emerges from recession. GDP has increased 0.3%, with Germany and France reporting in solid gains. The data beat many economists' expectations. However, critics are saying that the region is not in the clear just yet. On September 4th, the GDP numbers released this week will be revised, which could indicate more clearly where the Eurozone stands in its recovery.
Boeing is still working out kinks with its Dreamliner 787s in the latest round of trouble. Japanese airline ANA Holdings reports an electrical wiring problem in the engine fire extinguishers. The issue was discovered during pre-flight maintenance of a jet at Tokyo Airport. In July, a fire broke out on an Ethiopian Airlines 787. Earlier this year, the jets were grounded for lithium-ion battery problems.
Investigations continue into the crash of a UPS cargo plane. The Airbus A300 jet crashed near an Alabama airport, killing 2 pilots on board. Sources say the plane caught fire before hitting the ground. UPS says the pilots were the only passengers on the flight.
Traders have an eye on retail earnings coming out this morning, especially in light of disappointing results from Macy's yesterday. The department store chain lowered its profit outlook for the year as sales numbers dipped on lackluster spending by consumers. The retailer is, however, pleased with how back-to-school shopping is shaping up. Meanwhile, growth in the farming industry allowed Deere & Company to plow past Wall Street's expectations. The tractor and equipment maker churned up revenue of $10 billion. That's a 12% spike over last year.
Chipotle is changing its standards on its beef supply due to a meat shortage. The chain will soon serve beef treated with antibiotics, a practice that it had previously steered away from in favor of offering only naturally raised meat. Beef production is expected to hit a 21-year low in 2014.
It could be a turning point for the tech sector as more women are finding jobs. USA Today reports the male-dominated industry is attracting more female workers. While a pay gap between men and women remains, online job site Dice finds the gap is closing, and women's salaries are catching up with those of males in the industry. We will learn more about the economy today with a CPI for June, industrial production, capacity utilization, and the NAHB Housing Market Index. On the earnings calendar, it's Kohl's, Cozy, Dillard's, Walmart, and Nordstrom. Lots of retailers. Still to come, fee phase, a shocking report on new charges at hotels, plus how mermaids are providing a fresh boost to tourism. But first, a legend comes to life on the big screen. Will the biopic of Steve Jobs live up to the expectations? Stay with us for Movies and Money next. Overachieving success of Apple founder Steve Jobs plays out on the big screen this weekend. Our movie guy Eric Childress is here. He has screened the movie for us.
I have.
How many stars?
Out of 4, 2.
Two.
And that's probably being pretty generous. It's a very generic treatment of Steve Jobs, and considering that Aaron Sorkin has been developing his own Steve Jobs screenplay, it's the version that you want to see. I don't know if it's going to get made, but it really kind of feels sort of like a faux social network in a way, and sort of the the way we sort of see the rise of him through up the the ranks at Apple and his downfall and all that kind of stuff. But Ashton Kutcher's, he's really trying to act and whatnot, but the film has a just kind of an odd structure, and it really doesn't do kind of a service to Jobs. I mean, it kind of shows him in the negative light a lot of the times, which is fine. He's human and all.
Steve, what's going on? Steve, you're on the Macintosh team. What's a Macintosh?
But the film kind of, really doesn't show the sort of the inspiration that, is just sort of like he had an idea and then everyone else did all the work.
Or maybe
So.
you just said it at the beginning. Social Network was so good that the bar was very high.
It's true, but it's not the same people doing it. So, I mean, you can't really compare. It's apples and oranges to an extent, but it really has that feel of someone trying to do a social network and just not, delivering.
Also coming out at the box office this weekend, along with Jobs, The Butler, lots of buzz there,
Yeah.
Paranoia, and
Kick-Ass 2.
Thank you, because
You're
my
welcome.
mother watches the show. What do you think about The Butler? You've not screened this,
Yeah.
but will it be a big winner at the box office, do
Well,
you think?
the Weinstein Company has sort of a history of not really delivering sort of big openings, especially during the summer. They've had some successes with Quentin Tarantino, but not so much with films like this. I think maybe sort of a mid-teen opening. We'll see how it's how it plays with if it, they're trying to market it as sort of like this year's The Help in a way, which is not going to generate that kind of success. But with Oprah, it's gotten some publicity, so we'll see how it does.
I'm going to see it this weekend.
Well, there you go.
So
You
I'll
can
let
tell
you
me
know.
how it is.
Okay. And at the box office last week, and here's a look at those numbers. Elysium at $29 million. We're the Millers. You like this one. It's a
Yeah.
comedy at 26. Planes at 22. Percy Jackson, See a Monster, 14. And Two Guns, right around $11 million. Are we getting any closer to any type of record-breaking summer here, Eric?
We actually are, surprisingly enough. We're at sort of the tail end of what looks like is going to be the biggest summer in box office history. 2011 set the record, 4.3 some billion. We're about $330 million away, and we have about 2.5 weeks up until Labor Day, sort of the unofficial end of summer. That we're going to see, that I think is going to happen. And probably by the next weekend, I think we'll have the record set.
What would be your pick for this weekend? Actually, you can pick two.
Okay, well, I think of the new movies, I think Kick-Ass 2 is going to be the film that does the best box office amongst the newbies. But I think We're the Millers is actually going to challenge it for the #1 spot. I think it's had really good word of mouth. I think it's sort of going to be a late summer sleeper. And we're setting the record. August, surprisingly enough, we've not had an August without a $100 million grosser since 2000.
Interesting.
And so We're the Millers is probably the only film this month that has a chance to even break that record. And it's going to be, that's going to be a struggle too.
Thanks for coming back, Eric.
Thank you.
Coming up, our hotel charges getting out of control. We'll take a look at the shocking fine print. But first, our mermaids in Florida stealing tourists from Mickey Mouse. First Business continues after this.
Hotels are running wild with fees. A study finds hotels are expected to rake in a record $2.1 billion in fees this year. And the charges are getting creative, including early departure fees, room service delivery, and using the in-room safe. The good news, the study finds that the industry is actually running out of ideas for the add-ons.
Before the state of Florida became a popular destination for Disney World and Universal Studio fans, unique roadside attractions lured in visitors. Now the state is stepping in to save some attractions, one of which has Fin fans. Jackie Keenan reports from Florida.
Welcome. We're glad you came to Weeki Wachee.
The curtains rise, little girls sit breathless, and behind the glass, mermaids dance. This is Weeki Wachee, an historic Florida roadside attraction. Located 40 miles north of Tampa, the park sits on crystal clear springs. And under the springs, mermaids give quite the show.
We were probably the quintessential roadside attraction. A gentleman by the name of Newton Perry had this idea of taking synchronized swimming underwater. And that was his vision, is to just take that on the surface and put it underwater. And that's how the whole concept of the Weeki Wachee Mermaids began.
It began in 1947, and by the 60s, when visitors flocked to Florida for beaches and sunshine, Weeki Wachee Mermaids performed for nearly 1 million visitors every year.
Deeper and deeper.
But soon after, attendance took a deep dive. In the early 70s, Mickey Mouse became more popular than mermaids, and tourists stayed put in Orlando. Weeki Wachee shuffled owners and eventually fell into disrepair. Early in the last decade, attendance averaged only 160,000 per year. But today, mermaids are smiling again. More and more visitors are discovering Weeki Wachee every year, and for that, the park has the state of Florida to thank. In 2007, when investors didn't want to sink any more money into the attraction, the state stepped in to save Weeki Wachee's tails. Today is Florida's newest state park, and Weeki Wachee has the funds to stay afloat.
Provides us those resources necessary to maintain what we've had here for the last 66 years. I don't ever like to use the word guarantee, but the odds of it remaining for generations to come are very, very good.
And Floridians are rediscovering the park. Last year, 263,000 nostalgic mermaid gawkers visited. Most of Florida's other historic roadside attractions weren't as lucky as Weeki Wachee. Most are closed. They simply couldn't compete with Orlando's shiny theme parks. But Weeki Wachee, with its roaming peacocks, water slides, clear springs, and of course, those mermaids, keep Florida residents interested. Like these 8-year-old mermaid enthusiasts who visit every year on their birthdays.
Who wants to be a mermaid?
Me, both of us.
For First Business News, I'm Jackie Keenan.
The next historic Florida roadside attraction to become a state park is Silver Springs. The once crystal clear springs are now polluted with algae. The transition to improve the property happens in October.
Money continues to pile on for the NFL. Forbes calls it the most lucrative sports league in the world. The NFL's 32 teams are worth an average of $1.17 billion. That's 5% higher than it was last year due to increasing revenue. Dallas Cowboys top the most valuable list, followed by the New England Patriots, Washington Redskins, New York Giants, and Houston Texans.
Still ahead, too much too soon? Why one trader believes Cisco's sell-off was overdone last night. Chart Talk is next. Cisco Systems had a very busy night last night off of earnings. Joining us now is Matt Kavanaugh of CMZ Trading, and I suspect this will leak into trading today. What do you see in the charts on this stock?
Well, this is a stock that's had a really nice run, up 25% over the last 3 months and 50% over the last year. So I see the stock really at a critical level. It's at a support level, and I'm cautiously optimistic here. I bought a little bit of the stock sub 24, and should be interesting to see whether people think that, hey, you know, this is overdone here, or are people starting to get a little bit nervous about holding this market?
So there's a possibility of a rebound for the stock. It wasn't a horrible report. Cisco actually beat by a penny, but I think it was the CEO comments about the economy that distressed people.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you see a tech company that arguably may be the #1 company saying, hey, we've got a really challenging global macro economic environment, people are going to say, wait a sec here, and that's exactly what happened. So Cisco really been firing on all cylinders, but giving people reason to pause.
Thank you for that update, Matt.
Thank you.
Coming up tomorrow, will Apple stock make a return this year back above $700? What traders are telling us in tomorrow's show. From all of us at First Business, have a great Thursday.